Welcome to the In the Money Players podcast, Saturday, June 28th edition. It's Stephen Foster weekend. That's where the majority of our attention is. Of course, Nick Tammaro here, joined by none other than Jonathon Kinchen, who is looking forward, I'm sure, to this final weekend at Churchill. Some pretty decent betting options under the Twin Spires, my friend.
Absolutely. And look, I'm a little bit thrown off. I think I have to. This is going to drive me insane. There we go. I feel like the host has to be on that side.
Yeah.
I was having like some sort of a weird dysmorphia. I love these cards where we get finished up with just stake after stake after stake. You get to see some superstars, you get to see some up and coming type horses, and I think this is a great example of that. And I'm pretty excited too. I think the Stephen Foster feels like it's kind of back, right? I mean, the Stephen Foster for a little while, it's kind of turned into a race where it was more of like a punchline as a big race in this country. This one feels like a pretty darn good edition of it.
Yeah, it really does. I mean, look, this race is dependent on the strength of the handicap division, and the handicap division right now is good. So we will talk about that a little bit later. There's 6 stakes all in all on the Stephen Foster Day card. We want to thank our friends at the KTDF for their continued support of the network, and this show is done with them as the sponsor. So again, get your horse to Kentucky. The purses are outstanding, and obviously the racing's never been better. Hopefully that'll suffice as an ad read, Jonathan. We'll see if that ends up being the case. But race 7 is the first of the stakes events on the 12-race card at Churchill Downs. It's the Fleur de Lis going at 3:52 Eastern time. And obviously, Jonathan, the conversation here starts with one particular item. Are we buying Torpedo Anna off the bit of a break and hoping that she has sort of figured it out again? Or are two of these up-and-comers, Royal Spa and Kinchen, are they just lying in the weeds, ready and waiting to take over?
You know, when the big race days come around and Torpedo Anna finds herself in deeper waters, I'm going to always try to beat her. I just don't think these are those deep waters. I think this is a group that she can handle just fine. I think she'll win. I think if you're playing that Derby City Pick 6, nice, simple little single here with her. But don't get me wrong. Whenever she shows up somewhere next, hopefully at Saratoga in a grade 1, I'll be trying to beat her.
Yeah, I agree. Obviously, the Derby City Pick 6 has a carryover. I think it's about $1.5 million going into Friday's racing. It'll be a forced payout on Sunday, but is obviously available, on this card as well. You know, the problem with her, and I received a lot of backlash on social media, which is very hard to believe, but after the Apple Blossom, and I wanted everybody to understand, like, I'm no Torpedo Anna detractor. I'm a Torpedo Anna fan. I took my daughter to Oaklawn for the Apple Blossom, where we were there and the Apple Blossom was running, and she was like gushing about Torpedo Anna, right? A female horse. She just loved it. So I'm a fan, but my comment was that she hadn't really been as good in those 2 races at Oaklawn as she had been last year. Well, then she came back in 3 weeks and obviously ran very poorly, and that was not, the Torpedo Anna that we had grown to know and love. So will the time away be better? I think the workouts look like they're better. What I'm hearing is that she's been better in the morning, so it looks like she's ready to rebound. I don't want to totally shortchange Royal Spa and Kinchen. They come out of the Shawnee, which came back fast, and Royal Spa ran a big race in there. I think Flavien Prat will have her a little bit off the pace, hoping that Torpedo Anna maybe gets hooked up a bit with Kinchen. So I would use the one as well. I'd probably use Kinchen more so as a backup. I don't really see Tax getting there, even though she did run well in that La Terrain. It was a bit of a slow race and not one that ended up proving to be all that formful, other than Darth Vader, who had the tough trip in there, coming back to win the Phipps, which was no great surprise. So fun way to get the sequence started, a 5-horse field, but one where I do think you can make a win case for at least 3 of them. I did not feel as if the 8th, the Tepin, was all that wide open. This, to me, Jonathan, looked like a 2-horse race. I don't really see the winner coming from outside of Lush Lips or Vixen. They were both vanquished by Nitrogen, who is unquestionably the top 3-year-old turf filly. And maybe by the end of the summer, we're saying the top 3-year-old filly, period, as apparently a date on the dirt is coming up for her, potentially in the Alabama. I thought Vixen could beat her on Oaks Day, and I felt good about it at the quarter pole. And I didn't feel good about it at the 8th pole. Nitrogen really kicked in a hurry and left Vixen in her powerful wake. I thought the winner comes from those 2. I'll be surprised if anybody else wins. How about you?
Yeah, I think there's an opportunity for some equity, right? I think that, like you said, it is a 2-horse race between the 5 Lush Lips and the 6 Vixen. I thought Lush Lips ran better than Vixen on the square last time they faced each other on this turf course. So for me, the equity for me is not using both, just using one. For me, it will be the 5 Lush Lips. who I think will get a nice, comfortable trip, should be forward enough, should be able to work out their own trip. And Vixen will be sitting off of them, and it'll be a race for who's better. And I think I know who's better. I think it's the 5 Lush Lips.
Yeah, I like the approach. Obviously, the pace in here doesn't figure to be robust. It looks like Ninth Island will probably go. I mean, Ninth Island did begin her 2025 turf campaign at a place where champions reside regularly, Sam Houston Race Park, but it's going to take a little bit of a step up. Home now to one of your favorite basketball players, Kevin Durant. I'm sure are you a Rockets fan now?
Wherever KD is, I'm a fan. But I can tell you what, though, I went to 13 Duke basketball games last year. My wife and my in-laws, huge Duke fans, and have turned me into one. You walk into Cameron, it's hard not to become one. Cooper Flag is sensational, and it works out well that I can now root for the home team, the Dallas Mavericks, where I grew up. So they're going to be good too. He's going to be a special basketball player.
It's a lot of Texas basketball that's going the right direction at the moment. So we will go on to third leg of this pick six sequence. The Kelly's Landing is at 6.5 furlongs. And we've got a good group that came together here for this grade 3, obviously headlined by Booth. Where did you land on Booth and everybody else, Jonathan?
Yeah, I mean, I think the key thing that you said so far was 6.5 furlongs. I know it's only a half furlong, but I think it matters for a horse like Booth who tries to run horses off their feet. He's going to have pressure from the outside, you would think, unless Julian decides to roll on Big Joe. I just feel like there's going to be some pressure for Booth, and I think that he's vulnerable in a spot like this. Now, I think when he gets to some of the races where he's going a flat 6 or maybe even going 7, I would be more comfortable because there would be this intent to kind of get him to relax. I think they're going to ride him the same way they always ride him, aggressively, and that's a concern for me. I'll use him, but I'm also going to use the 1 Dr. Venkman, and I'll use the 2-3 Technique as a kind of a C type, a little bit of a saver type who I think could pick up pieces late. I see it 1-3-2, but the 1 I think is kind of where I find the most value, Dr. Venkman.
Yeah, I agree with that. I kind of, if I was making a top pick in here, I think I'd pick 3 Technique just to be a little cheeky. I like that last workout. I don't have any report on it, but it looks like obviously it was quick. 6.5 is a little sharp for him, but when he won the Nehru at Belmont back in 2023, he was kind of getting to the front around the 16th pole. So I think 6.5 could be ideal. There's going to be pace in here. Right, as you alluded to, Booth is going to get hooked up with Roll on Big Joe early. I can't imagine Julian wants to take this horse totally out of the game. I don't think Otto the Conqueror will go, obviously being from a common trainer, but Durante was also in attendance at the pace last time out and somehow still won. I don't want to shortchange him, but boy, I really don't want him at 6-1 after missing him at 33-1. Me and everybody else who missed him that day. So I agree. 1 and 2 primarily for me. I do want to give Booth a little bit more credit than I probably initially did because I felt like he set a moderate pace 2 back at Oaklawn on a day where speed was very, very good. But he was game in the Maryland Sprint. He's obviously blossomed into a really nice horse. And so I'm looking forward to seeing how he does now in a bit tougher objectives. These Oaklawn horses don't always reproduce their form elsewhere, but he feels like a horse that Steve has just gotten into really top form. And no different than Matoli himself, the sire of Booth. Steve gets these horses good. They stay good for a while. So especially the sprinting types, fun horse on this Stephen Foster Day card. Let's go to the 10th, the Wise Dan, a grade 2 at a mile and a 16th. Now, my understanding from Steve Bick is that the former Conti is going to scratch. And that's going to change this race substantially. I hadn't read or heard about it anywhere else. But if he's out, I do think it becomes a bit more wide open race. I've got to say, Jonathan, if I get 6-1 on Fort Washington, I'm definitely on board there. I think he fits this race like a glove. I love the fact that he moved early last out at Pimlico and stayed on with it. I almost thought in mid-stretch, I needed Fort Washington. I almost thought in mid-stretch like he was a sitting duck as the horses started to rally to him, including Cash Equity, who made that big move to the rail. But I think he gets a good setup in here. There's just enough speed. There are enough pace-interested horses, even without Mercante, I think, to make it solid enough early for him. So I like Fort Washington, but I'm also not going to be beaten by Brilliant Birdie, who I thought took a big step up last time out, using different running style than we'd seen in quite some time. Brian was very aggressive with Brilliant Birdie, and we'll see if those tactics are employed again. Where did you land?
Yeah, I'm a little spready here. I'll use the 7 and the 8, both that you mentioned. I like that Fort Washington has shown to run well on firm ground and on what was yielding ground Preakness weekend. That versatility, I think, is comforting for me for a horse that doesn't need things to go everything their way. Brilliant Birdie, like you said, ran well. Mercante, if he runs, great. Using him, I think he's a very good horse. If he doesn't run, that's fine. And then the two Laganos, I wanted to use closing into a slow pace last time. One of my favorite angles in turf racing, and especially with a rider like Flavien Prat. He's had 3 opportunities on this horse. I think at this point he's probably got to figure it out now. He should be able to save ground on the inside from that post position, and be able to just try to get lucky late, find a little gap, get out. I'll use those 3 horses. I don't need the California horse, Mi Hermano Ramon. I'm just never going to take those types California turf horses when they come east, when I believe that we have a couple that are okay in here. And I think there's a couple that are okay in here.
Yeah, and that mile division out there looks particularly weak, right? I mean, I don't hold King of Gosford in very high esteem at all. And Cabo Spirit has had some dances at the big level, but has never really proven to be a grade 1 caliber horse. So I think that Shoemaker was a grade 1 in name only. And Mi Hermano Ramon also has never really been a horse that's all that fond of winning. He seems to find his way into the frame more often than not. But I agree. I would be willing to take him on. I thought what you said about Laganos made perfect sense. And, Flavian's gotten to develop a little bit of a style of changing horses' running styles as he gets aboard them. And he definitely took Laganos a little farther back in pretty much every race where he's been on board. I wonder if he might want to put him a little bit more forward in here, just because he does have that ability to kind of grind away. We will see how things shake out in the Wisedan, a good race that goes as race 10. Well, the centerpiece of this 12 race card is race 11, the Stephen Foster at 1 1/8 miles. And I'll tell you, Jonathan, I felt like it was a fascinating group that came together. There were horses that I could make a case for. I also felt like I had a knock on all of them. What do you think of this 7-horse affair?
Well, the funny thing, I think that when you have a couple of Brad Cox runners, but no one who's making the lead. Like, it doesn't really feel like anyone necessarily has that wire to wire feel. So to me, it felt like it was going to be a kind of clustered type of race. And while I would love to be against a Breeders' Cup Classic winner in Sierra Leone, who I feel like is always going to be just a tad bit over bet, right? He lost a photo in the Derby. He danced all the 3-year-old races, outside of the Preakness. But I feel like he's going to get invited into the race. I feel like he had an excuse based on his last performance. He was supposed to go to the Middle East. He didn't go because he wasn't training well. Then he shows up in Fairgrounds as kind of a bridge moment. That obviously didn't go great. He didn't run particularly well there, and then he had this long gap in between. But he shows up here, and I think this is probably a great stepping stone for a middle spot between now and the Whitney. I just think he's going to get invited into the race in a way that he's going to end up running pretty well. I don't love that he's probably going to be a short price. So I'm going to also use the 1 First Mission, who I think has just gotten pretty good. He's a pretty consistent type. He's disappointed consistently, but then he still runs pretty well consistently. He's just one that I think also is going to appreciate the way the race is run from that inside draw, being able to kind of hold that position. And when it turns for like a sprint to home, when there's 7 horses in the mix, I think he might have found himself in the right place. And then Mindframe, who I think is probably the most talented horse. There's still a little bit of a question mark for him, right? He won that war on Derby Day. But is he going to run better going a little bit longer, right? I mean, some of his biggest performances were his Haskell and his Belmont, where he was being goofy, and that prevented him from beating a horse like Dornick. And I just feel like maybe he's got the most talent. So for the Foster, I'm going to use those 3 horses, hold my nose, and let the other ones beat me.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. I would say I'm going to take a more critical approach of Sierra Leone and make him sort of prove it to me again, just because I didn't love that Fairgrounds race at all. And I know that 90 days of inactivity was sort of by design. I think there was a casual mention early on by Chad of trying him in the Ali Sheba. And I hold Sierra Leone in high esteem. I know there were a lot of people that sort of made this horse become a punchline last year because he did lose a lot of races where he was expected to win. But I do think he had things against him on a number of occasions and still put forth some really good efforts. And, being a Timeform US user, when the horse has red in his pace lines, he either wins or he's close. And when he doesn't, he doesn't. And that's not all that surprising. It's hard making a living coming from off the pace in dirt route races, especially when there's no pace in front of you. My concern with First Mission is that, number one, that race at Oaklawn, races exist at Oaklawn in isolation way too often for me. What happens at Oaklawn in many ways stays at Oaklawn. It was clearly the best running line of anybody in this race this year. And if he runs it again from a speed figure perspective, he's going to win. My worry is that they're going to be reticent to go to the lead because he seems to be better when he has a target. And if they do that, I worry about what kind of trip he's going to get stuck with. I think if Luis Saez had it his way, he would probably tell Julian in the post parade, I need you to send that horse that has no chance as much as possible so that I can then get outside of you and stalk the pace. But Irad and Jose are not going to be in a big hurry to let Luis get off the rail. And they both are on horses with enough speed to lock him into that position. I thought what you said about Mindframe is spot on in the sense that he went long that pair of times last year in his third and fourth career starts. So am I concerned about his ability to get 9 furlongs? I am. Until he proves it, I'm going to be worried. But I think the excuse is he was lightly raced at that point. He was still developing, still maturing. Obviously, he looked very good last time. I didn't think he looked that great at Gulfstream. I thought he ran a lot better last time. But it was in a 7 furlong race where he sat back and made the last run unencumbered on the outside. You know, if you give Bookham Dano's Mindframe's trip, does he win? I think he probably wins by a length and a half, right? So he did have things go the proper way. I'm going to just use, with all that said, I'm going to use the 1 and 2. I'm going to try and get out of it alive. I don't really see Skippy Longstocking or Hit Show being good enough to win this race. I do think you and I at least have to mention Mystic Dan. I think we probably feel similarly about his chances of winning this race. I'm glad that he's back in form. Apparently, he has still looked good in the mornings in preparation for this. I just don't think the best version of Mystic Dan, which we've seen now a couple of times, is good enough to win.
Yeah, and you know, we talked about it with Sierra Leone, these 3-year-olds who are on the 3-year-old Triple Crown Trail and the Travers Trail, the Haskell Trail. They are often just so overbet for the remainder of their careers because everyone knows their name. You have a Derby winner at Churchill Downs running in a Grade 1. He's going to be overbet based on his chances. And he's disappointed me enough and run horribly enough that I'm okay. If he beats me, congratulations to Mystic Dan, but he's just going to be too short of a price for what he deserves to be. I will agree. He did impress me last time in terms of him kind of turning it around to a certain extent. I think he's one of those horses that needs everything to go his way, including who he lines up against. And those two things don't seem to be in his corner on Saturday.
Agreed. Let's go to the nightcap, the American Derby at 1 mile and a 16th on turf. The return to turf for Tistastic, the Louisiana Derby winner, who went off 24-1 in the Kentucky Derby and had a bit of a rough go of it. Did have some real trouble in upper stretch. Joel was trying to work through on the inside, always tough to do in the Derby, but now goes back to the lawn. And I think, I'll admit, Jonathan, I'd actually forgotten how good this horse's 2 turf races were last year at Kentucky Downs, just about a week apart. And he goes back to the weeds. I think the regular turf horse that's going to garner the most support in here is the 1 Reagan's Wit. If I was making a pick, I'd pick the 1. I feel like this horse is probably a little bit better than these horses, at least depending on what we get out of Tistastic. He was bet down to 1-2 last time out in a race that was a bit of a fait accompli in the James Murphy, as the scratches really made it so that Reagan's Wit was going to be very, very tough to handle. You know, I'm not sure how good he is. I think he's just solid. But I think he's good enough to win this race. Again, I'm interested in how Tistastic runs getting back to the turf. My off-the-wall horse that I'll include in the multis is the 9 Gicoso, who had didn't exactly have any trouble in the American turf and was definitely on the best part of the turf course. But if you're a Thorograph user, this horse ran a big sheet number. So he got a 6 on the Thorographs last time, which to me is enough. Understandably, he was wide, but he's run well locally now twice. And this is obviously a much softer spot from a class perspective. I feel about Freedom's Not Free a little bit like we felt about Mi Hermano Ramon. Those 3-year-old turf horses out west don't look like they've been much. And a horse that beat this one, Scipio, has come over and not really run well on the eastern half of the United States twice. So that would be it for me, just 1, 3, and 9. How are you going to close out this Foster Day card?
Yeah, I mean, I think that looking at this late sequence, I'm going to try to make my money on Lush Lips, just using 1 horse instead of using the 2 horses in that spot. And then in this race where I'm going to try to beat the 1, 2, and the 3, I'm going to use them as Bs. But when you have a horse like Reagan's Wit who won at 1-2, and like you said, this was like the easiest horse on the entire Preakness undercard, this horse had to win that race. It was not a good race, and the horse did. Reagan's Wit showed up and won. Flying Mohawk, Derby runner. The narrative was surrounding this horse that the horse wants turf. Now he's getting turf. Going to be a little bit overbet. Still, I question how good he might actually be. And the same with Tistastic, this idea that, he's a Derby runner. He ran well. He's doing well. He could probably win, and he might win. But I'm going to go with the 5 Minaret Station, who I thought ran extremely well as a 2-year-old, who got a very good number as a 2-year-old. And if you can expect this horse to take another step forward off of that 2-year-old number, just that normal 10 to 12 points on the buyer scale for maturity, I think Minaret Station is right there in the mix. I'm also going to use the 2 runners out of that allowance race on June 7th, Native Runner and Inagata, who I thought ran pretty well, got nice figures, and should present some value. And then Giocoso as well for me, the 9. I picked that horse in the American Derby, which was a little bit crazy at 20-1, but I like that horse as well. This is a situation where I don't think Reagan's Wit, Flying Mohawk, or Tidstastic are that much better than what their prices are going to be. I'm going to try to get sexy in this last leg.
I like it. A little bit of value there to close us out on this Stephen Foster Day card. And again, wanted to thank our friends at the KTDF. Their sponsorship of the network has been obviously invaluable for us. We're proud to be partnered with the KTDF. Purses in Kentucky are powered by the Kentucky Thoroughbred Development Fund and have led to an incredible enhancement to the Kentucky racing scene. KTF dollars and purses only for Kentucky-bred horses. So breeding in Kentucky is the best way to maximize profits and return on racing and breeding investments. Because of the benefits from the KTDF, Churchill Downs Racing and Kentucky circuit as a whole continues to be on an incredible upward trajectory. For more information, please check out inthemoneypodcast.com/KTDF. Check out inthemoneypodcast.com for analysis and selections throughout the weekend, including at Churchill, Monmouth, and beyond. Jonathan, thanks so much. Good luck on this sequence. Good luck on the trek northward, and we'll be looking for you up at the spa. There he goes, off mute and ready to rock and roll. Well, that's going to do it for us on this In the Money Players podcast. Big thank you to all of you. Rate, like, subscribe. Feedback is a gift. We thank you, especially all of you In the Money Plus members, for your patronage. Again, for Jonathon Kinchen, Nick Tammaro here. Until next time, best of luck.